Fast and Furious presents Hobbs & Shaw is wrecking its way into theaters soon. But who are Hobbs & Shaw? And how do you start untangling the wacky chronology of Fast and Furious? And what does presents mean? Okay, I guess we know that. But for everything else, we're about to hit the NOS and cram almost 2 decades of Fast and Furious into your brain. So let's do this, fam. The very first Fast and Furious movie, titled The Fast and the Furious, opens with a heist on a truck carrying priceless DVD players and TV VCR combos. And you know, even in 2001, they probably could have come up with something a little bit better than that. This same team has been pulling off a string of high-speed robberies, and their cars are always modified for street racing. So the FBI and police send a cop named Brian O'Connor undercover to infiltrate the LA underground street racing scene, because they too have seen and enjoyed 1991's Point Break.
You want that detective badge fast, kid. And you want to know something? The FBI can help.
Brian poses as a new guy working at a high-performance auto parts shop and starts hanging around a grocery store owned by the main figurehead in the racing scene, Dominic Toretto.
Every day for the last 3 weeks, you've been coming in here and you've been asking me how the tuna is.
Brian's also flirting with Mia Toretto, Dom's sister, who runs the lunch counter. Dom, who's generally anti-Mia flirting,
don't come around here again,
also has a crew with him at all times who won't matter after this movie, except for his girlfriend, the very fast and also quite furious Letty Ortiz, and the angry meathead Vince, who dislikes Brian right from the start. Brian gets to know more people in the street racing scene like Edwin, and Hector. And believe it or not, Hector is the one you should remember, because despite performing the first movie's theme song, Ja Rule never again returns to the franchise. He had much more lucrative and successful music festivals to plan, I'm sure. Anyway, Brian overdoes it on the nitrous, or NOS, and loses his car to Dom in a big street race. He also comes off looking like a real doofus.
You never had your car.
But he earns Dom's respect by picking him up and driving him to safety when the cops raid the race. Brian gets invited into Dom's inner circle.
I'll tell you what, when you're not working at Harry's, you're working here.
Learning all the important information there is to know about Dominic Toretto, like his favorite beer.
You can have any brew you want, as long as it's a Corona.
And his prized possession, his dad's 1970 Dodge Charger RT.
Yeah, my dad built her.
Yep, that's about it.
I live my life a quarter mile at a time.
Yeah, sure, whatever you say. Brian also hooks up with Mia, which is definitely the sort of thing police officers working a case are supposed to do. At first, Brian thinks it might be a gang from Chinatown run by a guy named Johnny Tran doing all the heists, but it's Dom. It's always Dom. Even though they're down a guy, Dom's crew decides to pull one big last score. Oh, awesome plan. Those always go so well.
After this, it's a long vacation for everyone. Let's go.
Brian, sensing Dom's time is running out, tells Mia his big secret. No, not how his hair gets that natural shine, the undercover cop thing. And he convinces her to help him find Dom before it's too late.
Mile 114 outside Coachella.
We just say Coachella, but whatever. Anyway, shockingly, in an unprecedented first, Dom's last big score before retirement to a sunny beach in Mexico doesn't go great. Letty gets into a big crash, but she's okay. And Paul Walker and his stunt double show up just in time to save the day. Brian reveals to everyone that he's an undercover cop.
This is Officer Brian O'Connor. I'm off-duty MAPD.
But just as he does, Johnny Tran and his henchman Lance, open fire. So Brian and Dom set aside their differences and team up to kill Johnny and Lance, because nothing will bring one-time rivals together quite like committing murders at high speeds. Again, ace police work here on Brian's part. At first, it seems like Brian is going to chase down and arrest Dom, but ultimately, with more cops closing in, Brian turns over his car and lets his new friend get away.
I owe you a 10-second car.
And that final bit of protection and service is the last we'll likely ever hear of Brian O'Connor and Dominic Toretto. Yep, I suspect they fade from here into the sunset, just as original director Rob Cohen surely imagined. I certainly can't... What's that? Oh, there's more. Oh, there's lots more. Too Fast, Too Furious hit theaters in 2003 and changed the way we make fun of sequel titles forever. After letting Dom escape, Brian is now on the run from the law and settled in Miami, where he's at no risk of seeing any former co-stars who refuse to come back for the sequel.
You want to race tonight?
Yeah, you know I could use the money.
There he's befriended brilliant entrepreneur Tej Parker, who organizes and manages the city's underground street race scene.
What's up, Tej?
What's happening, dude?
But right after Brian clinches a major victory in a big race, he's captured and arrested by U.S. Customs agent Markham. Markham is teamed with everyone's favorite character from the first movie, FBI agent Bilkins. It seems a maniacal local drug dealer, Carter Verone, is looking for new drivers.
The first team back here with the package will have an opportunity to work for me.
And the feds want Brian to once more go undercover and help bring Verone down. Brian agrees, but only if they'll let him bring in his old childhood friend, Roman Pierce, who's currently on probation and working at a demolition derby in Barstow, California. Roman's still angry with Brian for becoming a cop, which he sees as a personal betrayal.
Pig.
But he gets over it and agrees to help in order to clear his record. Another undercover agent, Monica Fuentes, who's working as Verone's personal assistant, also helps them out. Because in 2003, Eva Mendes was featured by law in every movie. Look it up.
Verone's looking for drivers. I've arranged for both of you to join up.
Brian and Roman prove their skills to Verone and beat out a couple of schmoes, including this guy, Corpy, for the big assignment.
Hey, where'd you get them cars at the bottom of a cereal box?
Which will be transporting all of Verone's hidden money to a yacht that will safely take it out of the country. Brian brings Tej in to help with the preparations.
Man, Tej's garage is ridiculous. He's got the best of everything.
Which leads to Tej and Roman meeting for the first time, a historic moment in Fast and Furious history. Also, Brian and Roman settle their differences.
I said forget about it, cuz.
Oh, isn't that nice? They're cuz again. Soon enough, the big day arrives. Verone's men load up Brian and Roman's cars with the cash, and they lead the local cops on a chase across Miami.
You're a good driver, man. Thanks, bro.
With help from Tej and his pal Suki, they use basically every street racer in the city as a decoy and make it to the Keys unscathed. But Verone has figured out that Monica is an undercover agent and changes up the plan at the last second. So Brian naturally decides to jump his car onto Verone's escaping boat to save the day. Verone is arrested, and the film ends with Roman and Brian celebrating their newly spotless criminal records.
You held up your end. Your records are clean.
By stealing some of Verone's cash. Well, these two, they are incorrigible.
And we ain't hungry no more either, bruh.
Next up is 2009's Fast and Furious, and I know, please, before you leave an angry comment and upvote 8 other angry comments, I know that the next movie in this franchise to get theatrically released was Tokyo Drift in 2006, but we're going through this narrative chronologically, and those events don't happen until much, much later. Let's keep this thing nice and orderly, okay? And do the 3rd/4th movie in the Fast and Furious franchise, which dropped the thes to just become Fast and Furious.
All right, we're good to go. Got this.
Okay, so we open in the Dominican Republic where, much like Miami and Los Angeles, there are many, many buts. Dom's got a new crew together and they're hijacking fuel tankers. Letty's there, of course, plus constantly bickering locals Taego and Rico, and a suave Korean guy named Han, whose story is just beginning right here and now with his friend Kara.
I thought we'd be robbing banks by now.
The big heist gets a little messy, but they just barely get away with it.
Heat's on, and we'll send up a flare that's gonna lead them right to us.
Still, Han and Dom decide, now that the heat's on, that it would be best for the crew to go their separate ways.
Time for you to go do your own thing.
Heard they're doing some crazy shit in Tokyo.
What? No, Han, we just went through this. You're staying right here for several more movies. I'm not explaining this again. Dom, afraid he'll leave the authorities to Letty, slips out in the middle of the night. But don't worry, he left her money and his trademark silver cross. Dom resettles in Panama City. Letty returns to Los Angeles where she meets up with Brian O'Connor, who's back to being a cop full-time following his Miami adventure. In an effort to clear Dom's name so he can return with her to the US, Letty agrees to go undercover and infiltrate the drug cartel of the very evil and mysterious Arturo Braga.
This guy is becoming one of our biggest national threats, and we don't even have a picture of him.
Unfortunately, this gets her killed. I mean, as far as we know. Stop jumping ahead.
Dom, it's Letty. She's been murdered.
Dom comes back to town for the funeral and to investigate Letty's murder using this new /automotive Spidey sense power that I'm going to call Toretto Vision. Both Brian and Dom's investigations lead them to a guy named David Park who recruits drivers for Braga's organization.
I just run cars for Braga, all right? All I can do is get you in the race.
The winner of this race, you see, will get a job with Braga.
Let me guess, winner gets the slot.
Is it me, or are these cartel guys spending way too much time and energy on elaborate new driver recruitment schemes? So the high-speed race is on through LA traffic, which may be the most ridiculous element of this entire movie. This random guy definitely dies, and Dom wins by clipping Brian and causing him to spin out at the last second.
Stupid. still a buster.
Braga's right-hand guy, Campos, hires Dom.
You work for Braga now.
And he gets aggressively hit on by another one of Braga's employees, Wonder Woman, going here by the name Giselle.
Cell phone number. The number is for me.
Brian pins a fake charge on another one of Braga's drivers.
No, that's never gonna stick, right?
Yeah, it's not supposed to.
So he also gets hired. Dom does a little digging and discovers the car that killed Letty belongs to another one of Braga's thugs, Phoenix.
Something interests you about this car?
Then it's time for their first big assignment, driving a shipment of heroin across the US-Mexico border.
There are blind spots that I can guide you through via satellite.
Come on, guys, that's not gonna work. There's that big wall on the Oh, tunnels. Yeah, they just use tunnels. After getting the heroin into the US, Dom confronts Phoenix and a gunfight breaks out.
70 Plymouth. Her name was Letty.
He gets away by using nitrous tanks to turn his car into a bomb.
I'm gonna enjoy what happens next.
Dom and Brian flee the scene in a Hummer loaded with Braga's heroin, and the feds want to call it a day.
Bring in the shipment and bring in Toretto.
But instead, Dom and Brian use the stolen heroin as bait to get Braga to come out into the open.
$6 million cash. Delivered by Braga himself.
At the exchange, the guys get presented with a fake Braga. It turns out Campos, the assistant, was the real Braga all along. He totally Ra's al Ghul'd them, the old fake assistant bit. Campos/Braga gets away and almost runs over Giselle, but Dom leaps to her rescue just in time. Brian's once again in trouble with his superiors for constantly breaking the law he's supposed to be enforcing.
As of now, you're being taken off active duty until this office can mount a formal inquiry.
So Brian and Dom decide, what the hell, they'll go to Mexico and take care of Braga themselves.
I'm going with you.
I don't plan on bringing anyone back.
This also gives Brian a chance to make things right with Mia, which turns out to be not very difficult at all. Giselle, still hot for Dom, hooks the guys up with directions.
This will help get you to Braga.
And they apprehend Braga while he's praying in a small church. See, he's not such a bad guy. He's at church. Braga gives him the old, we're not so different you and I bit.
You and me, we know so different.
And then they're off on a race to get him back across the border in the US to stand trial, using the same underground tunnels they used to make the heroin run. See, this is efficient storytelling. After a messy crash landing, Phoenix gets the drop on Brian, but just then, Dom smashes through the mountain and directly into him right before delivering his classic Dominic Toretto catchphrase.
Pussy.
We'll work on that. Anyway, Braga's arrested, and Dom even agrees to stick around and face the legal consequences of his former lifestyle.
I ain't running anymore.
But after he's sentenced, Brian, Mia, Tego, and Rico show up to help him escape anyway, so he is running anymore. I mean, it's nice, it just seems like the exact opposite of Dom's stated wishes. That's all. Fast 5 marks the series' transition from racing-themed action movies to epic, globe-trotting superhero heist films. So naturally, it opens with a heist. Brian and Mia springing Dom from his prison bus. According to Perd Hapley, all three of them are now wanted fugitives, so they take off for Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Dom's old friend Vince is down there. Remember him, the meathead from the first movie who didn't like Brian? Well, he still doesn't.
Buster.
He's got a wife now, Rosa, who figures out right away that Mia is pregnant with Brian's baby. But before she can share the good news, there is a job to be done.
Couple of high-end cars, easy targets.
This job involves pulling cars that have been seized by the DEA off of a speeding train and then driving them to safety. The team pulling the heist, including their leader Zizi, is looking for one car specifically, a Ford GT40. And he does not like it when Dom puts his sister in it. The whole job goes very bad, and Dom and Brian escape only through some very quick thinking, fast driving, and physics ignoring. It turns out the job was organized by ruthless local drug lord Hernan Reyes, a powerful figure in Rio and the owner of the hijacked cars.
You two started up quite a bit of trouble today.
But he didn't really care about the Ford. He needed a computer chip that was stored inside, containing all sorts of valuable information about his drug business.
It's a delivery schedule.
And now that Brian, Dom, and Mia have it, Reyes will stop at nothing to get it back. Meanwhile, the US government brings in a particularly relentless, dedicated member of the Diplomatic Security Service to track down and capture American fugitives in Rio and bring them to justice. That's right, a pre-Shaw Luke Hobbs.
We find them, we take them as a team, and we bring them back. And above all else, we don't ever let them get in the cars.
I can smell what this guy's cooking. As a guide and translator, Hobbs hires a local Rio patrol officer named Elena Neves. Reyes had her husband killed, so she's ready for a fight.
You're motivated. Plus, I figure you're the only one in Rio who can't be bought. Am I right?
Yes.
Everyone converges at once on the crew's hideout in one of Rio's favelas, leading to an epic chase and shootout. Dom risks himself to save Elena, which makes her start to question her loyalty. That guy just has a way with cops, what can I say? Later, she finds his silver cross, the symbol of his relationship with Letty, and keeps it. Brian, Mia, and Dom just barely get away, and Mia tells Brian that she's got a little valve in the camshaft.
I'm pregnant. Promise me we stick together.
They decide not to run, but to use the information they have on Reyes to steal all of his money, which means bringing in a crew of familiar faces from past movies. There's Han from the Dominican Republic, and only the Dominican Republic, plus Brian's pal Roman from Barstow, Tej from Miami, who used his time away to apparently get a lot better at both driving and computers, Giselle, who until recently was working for a different brutal drug dealer, but hey, a job's a job, I guess.
You know, when you called me to come to Rio, I assumed it would be for something more exciting than this.
Oh, and bickering pals Tego and Rico also come down. I mean, how could I forget about them? The plan is to rob one of Reyes' count houses so that he'll consolidate all of his money somewhere safe. It works. Only the place he moves the cash is to a very secure vault
10 tons of top-of-the-line security.
down at police headquarters.
This job just got a lot harder.
Then there's a lot of prep for the heist that you don't really need to know about. All that really matters is that Han and Giselle fall for one another.
I think I'm in love.
And Dom and Hobbs begin developing a begrudging mutual respect. So, you know, the exact opposite of what actually happened on set with these two.
I'll see you soon, Toretto.
Dom breaks into Elena's apartment to get his cross back, and she becomes convinced deep down that he's a really good guy.
People here need a new start. They need to be free.
The night before the big job, everyone shares what they're planning to do with their earnings.
Actually, man, I've been thinking about opening up a garage back home. A place where people can bring their cars and not get completely ripped off, you know what I mean?
Wait, Tej, back in Miami, you already had a garage. It was called Tej's Garage. It was really nice.
Man, Tej's garage is ridiculous. He's got the best of everything.
Anyway, a good time was had by all until Hobbs and his team break up the party.
You just made a big mistake.
Everyone's taken into custody, and Hobbs is arranging to send them back to the U.S. when the caravan is attacked by ZZ and Reyes' men. Hobbs is about to be captured, but Dom and Brian come to his rescue. Sadly, Vince dies in the fighting. You know, Vince, remember him, the meathead that got into a fight with Brian in the first movie? Don't worry, they made up eventually. Dom's crew is about to give up on the whole plan.
They tripled the detail at the police station. It's gonna be a wall of gunfire.
But Hobbs and Elena show up and agree to help them. Partly for revenge, but hey, also partly to help set up these sequels.
I'll ride with you, Toretto.
They give up on any kind of delicate Ocean's 11 style perfect crime in order of a brute force attack. Hobbs drives an armored Jeep into the police station where Brian and Dom attach Reyes' safe to 2 cars and speed off. I mean, yes, a lot of Rio is destroyed in the ensuing chase with crooked cops controlled by Reyes, but this is important. I mean, we're talking revenge here, okay? In the end, Dom takes out most of the cop cars with the safe before smashing into Reyes' vehicle. Brian shoots ZZ, and Hobbs makes sure that Reyes is definitely dead. He then graciously agrees to give Brian, Dom, and their team a full day to get away before he starts chasing them again.
The way I see it, you've earned yourself 24 hours. Money stays, though.
It's just a nice gesture. I mean, what's one more intense global manhunt costing US taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars between friends? In the end, it's revealed that the heroes took advantage of the chaos to swap safes, so they got away with the money after all. Dom leaves some for Vince's widow Rosa and her son Nico. Tej buys his dream garage that's definitely not as nice as the garage we already saw him own in an earlier movie. Giselle and Han drive off into the sunset.
I thought you wanted to go to Tokyo.
We'll get there. Eventually.
It's like he's doing this to taunt me specifically. Dom ends up with Elena, and Brian walks romantically on the beach with a very pregnant Mia. And in a post-credit scene, Agent Monica Fuentes makes a shocking revelation to Luke Hobbs.
You need to look at that.
Letty Ortiz is alive? The opening credits of the 6th movie actually provide their own little series recap. Hey, come on, don't steal our bit. We don't wear shirts 3 sizes too small and drink Coronas in our videos. Anyway, as this entry opens, Agent Hobbs is hot on the trail of an ex-military turned thief named Owen Shaw. And before you jump ahead, this is not Hobbs's Shaw, it's his brother.
He ran the UK's mobility division in Kabul and Basra.
Anyway, Shaw's putting together a very dangerous device called a nightshade.
A tech bomb designed to block an entire military communication grid for 24 hours.
That's Hobbs's new partner, Hicks, with that very important information that's not just the latest in a series of MacGuffins.
If you're half as good as you are on paper, We're gonna get along just fine.
Even though the previous movie set him and his team up as the world's most elite crew of badasses, Hobbs is convinced that he needs help to catch Shaw.
You just don't pick up Owen Shaw like his groceries. You want to catch wolves, you need wolves.
So he tracks down ace DVD thief Dominic Toretto, who's enjoying early retirement with Elena, the Brazilian cop, in Spain.
It wasn't that hard to find you, Toretto.
Dom wants nothing to do with the caper until Hobbs shows him the photo of Letty, who apparently is now running with Shaw's crew. What's going on? Dom reassembles his team from the last movie, including new dad Brian, Roman, Tej, Han, and Giselle. At first they think they've got the drop on Shaw at his hideout, but it's just a distraction so that he can sneak into Interpol HQ and steal information. It seems Shaw's got his own elite crew, so now we're having a bit of an elite crew off, which I have to say, not a terrible subtitle for a future Fast and Furious sequel.
It's like we're hunting our evil twins.
During the ensuing chase, Dom spots Letty. But when he catches up to her, she doesn't remember him. And when you don't recognize someone, always shoot them. That's just basic survival 101.
That's the guy I shot. I don't remember him.
After that, there are a bunch of scenes where our heroes get more information about Shaw and his plans using a diverse array of creative tactics. Jeez, at least they only publicly humiliate this guy. One of Shaw's guys reveals that he's been secretly working with Arturo Braga. Remember him, the LA drug kingpin Brian was sent after in Fast and Furious?
I ran everything for Shaw. Drugs, guns, money, women.
Brian feels guilty about having sent Letty undercover in Braga's organization, so he returns to the US and enters federal prison to find out what really happened to her.
The only way you get close to Shaw is if he wants you there.
He's actually not that helpful. I'm really not sure this trip was worth it, man. Once Brian is back, the team tracks Shaw to Spain, the location of a computer chip that's the last ingredient he needs for his big evil whatever.
Bingo. It's a NATO base in Spain.
Shaw and his team attack the NATO military convoy carrying the chip, using a tank to make their big getaway. He reveals he's kind of a huge psycho, giving Letty some major second thoughts, but she's fully convinced to switch sides once Dom super heroically saves her life. I mean, come on, lady. He totally violated the laws of physics for you, and after you shot him. It looks like our heroes have totally saved the day.
What are you thinking?
We always talk about Tokyo.
But no! Shaw reveals that his men have kidnapped Mia.
Maybe you should call Mia.
Forcing Dom and Hobbs to let him go.
But this changes nothing.
It changes everything.
Also, Riley reveals that she was totally on Shaw's team the whole time. I bet you didn't see that coming, and not because it doesn't matter at all and she's about to die anyway.
Wrong team, bitch.
Shaw has arranged for a plane to pick him up back at the NATO base, but Dom and his crew manage to weigh it down with their cars. There's a ton of fighting both on and off the plane, but it's fine because this is apparently one of the world's longest runways. Tragically, in an effort to save Han's life and clear her schedule for possible future DCEU projects, Giselle dies in the skirmish. Shaw is thrown from the plane, and Dom is nearly killed when it explodes, but he's okay. In the end, everyone's pardons come through and they return to Los Angeles.
You're all free.
Elena takes the high road and clears the way for Dom and Letty to be together.
This is your family. It's who you are.
And they devastated Han, yes, finally, decides to go to Tokyo.
It's just something I gotta do.
The Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift takes place here in the Fast and Furious timeline, even though it was released several years before the 4th, 5th, and 6th movies. But I'm sure they meticulously planned ahead and guessed accurately at how technology would develop in the intervening years.
Everybody needs a cell phone.
Yo, Okute.
Meet Sean Boswell, a teen with an Alabama accent so thick, Leonard Skinner wrote a song about it. At school, Sean gets in trouble after innocently flirting with a jock's girlfriend.
It's not the ride, it's the rider.
And gets challenged to a race.
Winner gets me.
Seems extreme. He didn't even make fun of the fact that that's one of the kids from Home Improvement. Basically, Sean gets in one little crash, and his mom has a plan. She says, "You're moving with your deadbeat father in Japan."
Come on in.
Sean befriends a streetwise hustler named Twinkie, who so far is the only character in this franchise to realize that he's in a movie. Guys, I think Bow Wow can see us. Sean also falls for his classmate Neela.
You're a quick learner.
But runs afoul of her Yakuza-connected boyfriend Takashi.
Understand that? Gaijin?
When Takashi, also known as the Drift King, challenges Sean to a race, who should step up and loan him a car but our old pal Han?
Easy to sound cocky when you got no ride.
Han moved to Tokyo after all and apparently got deep back into crime. Good for him? I don't know. I guess we all heal differently.
You gave me my money. You're in the pickup and delivery business now.
Sean, who displays a frankly humiliating inability to drift his car during the race.
Drift? What do you mean, drift?
Suffers a disgraceful defeat and totals Han's ride. But the experience brings them closer together and they become friends.
Yeah, who you choose to be around you, but you know who you are.
Han even teaches Sean how to drift.
First drifters invented drifting out here in the mountains by feeling.
But things take a dark turn when Takashi and his even more Yakuza-connected uncle, Sonny Chiba, discover Han has been hiding money from them.
You think you keep your side deals from me?
This leads to a daring and also kind of familiar nighttime chase through the streets of Tokyo, which ends with Han's car being T-boned by a Mercedes and exploded. And it's here that we have to rewind / fast forward to the post-credit scene from Fast and Furious 6, which reveals that Han is killed by new villain Deckard Shaw, played by Jason Statham, brother of Owen Shaw, and out for revenge. After Han's death, Sean and Takashi have one final race to determine who has to leave town. Seriously, that's what happens. That's the big climax.
We race, and the loser leaves town for good.
So Sean is declared Tokyo's new Drift King, but right away he has a mysterious out-of-town challenger.
Said he knew Han. Said Han was family.
That's right, it's Dom.
You ready, kid?
And I know this seems a bit disorienting timeline-wise, but don't worry because it'll all get worked out in Furious 7, which starts off with Deckard Shaw, the older brother of Owen Shaw, who's even more of an elite ex-military badass.
Rest now, little brother, while I sell you one last skull.
Deckard Shaw is now on a single-minded mission to kill Dom and his extended family as vengeance for nearly killing his little brother. And also, I guess, foiling his brother's evil plan. He's not too happy about that either.
You don't know me. You're about to.
He was able to blow up Dom's house and track down Han in Tokyo by breaking into Hobbs' office and stealing his files. In an historic keystone meeting in cinema history,
You just earned yourself a dance with the devil, boy.
Hobbs and Shaw fight, and let's be honest, they both do pretty good. But in the process of saving Elena from an explosive thrown by Shaw, Hobbs gets banged up pretty bad. Plus, he's suffering from a severe case of can't be in the same room with Vin Diesel-itis.
Dad.
Oh, I'm sorry, baby.
Dad?
Oh, that's right. This movie reveals that Hobbs has a daughter we didn't know about. There she is, Samantha Hobbs. Anyway, her father, Luke Hobbs, is going to sit this one out.
When you find that sumbitch, just do me one favor.
What's that?
Don't miss.
But Dom heads to Tokyo to look deeper into Han's death and bring his body back to the US. He meets up with Han's new pal, Sean Boswell, in a scene that we saw play out in Tokyo Drift, and they swap Han stories.
Han mentioned he left his enemies in his rear view. He never talked about it much.
Sean also gives Dom back his silver cross, which Deckard Shaw dropped at the crash site.
When you find the guy that killed Han, what are you gonna do?
Words ain't even been invented yet.
I'm gonna invite him to join my crew, aka my family, in the next sequel. Back in LA, they have a funeral for Han, but Dom spots a suspicious-looking car and chases after it. Of course it's Deckard Shaw. You know what? Shaw. He's the default Shaw now. Owen Shaw is in a coma this movie. I'm tired of saying Deckard. It's just Shaw. The chase ends in a game of chicken, but these guys don't know how to play, apparently, and just crash into each other. Before Shaw can kill Dom, a whole SWAT team of guys swoops in and starts shooting. They're working for a covert government operative who goes by the code name Captain Ron. It's Mr. Nobody, sorry. Mr. Nobody.
There's a war going on between shadows and ghosts like me.
There's a whole running thing about how much he enjoys Belgian ale, so I'm just gonna drop that here. Maybe it comes up again and you want to feel informed. That's what the show's about.
Belgian ale. Oh man, those monks got it right.
Anyway, Mr. Nobody has an elaborate proposal for Dom. He wants the team to rescue a hacker named Ramsey from a mercenary named Jakande. As with all of Jaimon Onsu's characters in big-budget studio movies, it's a very nuanced, three-dimensional take on a villain.
Give us the girl, and I'll let you live.
To pull off the rescue, they have to skydive in their cars, so car dive, I guess, onto a secluded road in Azerbaijan's beautiful Caucasus Mountains.
Touchdown, baby!
Brian also has to fight Tony Jaa and jump off a bus that's teetering off a cliff on the back of a car. That is intense. But it works, and they save Ramsey.
Ex-cop, tech guy, Alpha, Mrs. Alpha, Joker.
Wrong.
Mr. Nobody wanted her because of her invention, an incredibly powerful piece of surveillance technology called the God's Eye.
Say hello to God's Eye.
Ramsey tells Dom and the team that her friend has it waiting for her in Abu Dhabi.
We're going to the Middle East.
Oh, he actually sounds excited. It's nice to take pleasure in your work. Unfortunately, Ramsey's contact in the Emirates, Safar, has sold the God's Eye chip to a trust fund billionaire / prince, like you do.
Trust fund billionaire, so they wanted to use it for his supercar.
He has put it into his 2014 Lykan Hypersport supercar, which Dom and Brian have to steal by driving it through a party and several skyscrapers.
Cars don't fly!
Is it worth mentioning that Ronda Rousey and T-Pain are at the party?
These parties bore me to death.
Or that Iggy Azalea was at Race Wars in a scene we skipped right over in one of the other movies? Let us know what you think in the comments below.
That's the girl I heard so much about. Where you been at?
Anyway, they do manage to get the God's Eye chip before the car gets smashed, but it sort of gets traded back and forth for a while.
I got a lot of friends.
It all wraps up with an epic battle on the streets of downtown LA, with Jakande tracking everyone using the God's Eye in a helicopter and trying to murder them with a Predator drone. While everyone else moves Ramsey around from car to car so that she can take control of the God's Eye remotely, Hobbs returns to action just in time and single-handedly takes out the drone. Well, okay, the ambulance helps. Because James Wan directed this and enough is never enough, Brian has to fight Tony Jaa again.
Too slow!
While Dom has a slow-mo street fight with Shaw in a parking garage. Dom wins. Eventually, the wizard Shazam gets blown up along with the entire parking garage. And Brian and Hobbs pulled Dom from the rubble, but he's unconscious. Letty brings him back around by revealing that she's gotten all of her memories back. We even see our first flashbacks to their wedding in the Dominican Republic. And yes, I know that this is featured in the 2009 short film Los Bandoleros, directed by Vin Diesel, but it's not in any of the movies, so it's the first time that you've seen it if you've only watched the movies. It's also where we see the true significance of that silver cross they keep knocking around. It's the one Dom and Letty used instead of a wedding ring. So there you go. Anyway, Dom's fine. As is Shaw, who we see get locked up in some kind of supermax prison situation by Hobbs.
You do know none of this will keep me, right?
He's right, it definitely will not. And of course, it's time to say goodbye to Brian O'Connor and actor Paul Walker, who was killed in a car accident during production of this movie on November 30th, 2013. The film ends with a touching tribute in which the entire family watches Brian play with his son Jack and wife Mia on the beach.
It's never goodbye.
And then Brian and Dom take one last drive together before going their separate ways.
Thought you could leave without saying goodbye.
We would play you the Wiz Khalifa song right now if we could afford it. I promise. Rest in peace, Paul Walker. As the most recent film begins, Dom and Letty are enjoying a much-deserved honeymoon in Havana, Cuba, where of course Dom immediately inserts himself into the local street racing scene. Dom stops to help a woman on the street.
Need a hand?
Yeah, I think I do.
Only to discover that she's the international cyber terrorist known as Cypher.
I put a lot of work into getting me here today.
She shows Dom something to convince him to turn against his own crew.
You're gonna betray your brothers, abandon your code, and shatter your family.
The movie won't tell you what it is yet, but I'm going to because this is Cram It and we hate suspense. Dom doesn't know it, but his ex-girlfriend Elena has given birth to his first and only son, and now Cypher has kidnapped them both. Soon after receiving this bombshell information, Dom gets a call from Hobbs.
I got a job in Berlin, and I need a favor, brother.
And we're off to Germany. Dom and his usual team, including Ramsey the hacker from Furious 7, successfully take control of an EMP. That's one of those devices that cuts off all the electricity in an entire area that you probably recall from almost any other spy or heist movie.
Woman, we just blew up their facility and stole their EMP.
After Tej uses a wrecking ball to clear the path, Dom goes rogue, knocking Hobbs off the road and taking the EMP.
It ain't too late to stop this.
Dom escapes onto Cypher's high-tech private jet, which she also uses as her hideout / Bond villain lair. The US government disavows knowledge of the entire operation, so Hobbs takes the fall for stealing the EMP and goes to prison. Coincidentally, the same prison as his old nemesis, Deckard Shaw. And you know what happens when these two get together. Catchphrases.
All show and no go. I will beat your ass like a Cherokee drum.
Mr. Nobody and his new assistant, who I'll call Little Nobody, help Hobbs and Shaw escape. And this pretty much brings us up to speed for the next movie. Can we just stop right here? No? Okay. Anyway, the whole team is reunited and learns more about what they're up against. They're joined by Deckard Shaw, who reveals that Cypher was also behind his brother Owen's operation in Fast and Furious 6.
Cypher came to me first. Wanted me to steal Nightshade for her. When I said no, she went after my brother.
Deckard Shaw now blames Cypher for what happened to his brother, not Dom, so I guess all their differences are resolved then.
We are not teaming up with this guy.
Let's get one thing clear. I ain't on your team.
Yeah, okay, we'll work on it. The team is gonna use the God's Eye to find Cypher and Dom, but before they can even finish, Cypher and Dom break into the secret headquarters and take the God's Eye for themselves. Cypher kisses Dom on her way out of the room just to rub it in Letty's face. That's cold. The two of them are off to New York, where Cypher plans to steal some nuclear launch codes from some visiting Russian dignitaries. Dom fakes engine trouble.
Engine's misfiring. I gotta check it out.
In order to sneak away and covertly meet with Owen and Deckard Shaw's mother, Magdalene. I believe Dame Helen Mirren is the first dame to appear in one of these movies, unless Iggy Azalea is a dame. Can I get a fact check on that?
And now why do I think you're about to suggest something really dodgy, Mr. Toretto?
Again, the movie holds what they discuss back, but I believe in being straight with you guys, so I'm just gonna tell you. They plan an elaborate strategy in which Deckard Shaw will fake his own death with the help of our old friends Rico Santos and Tego Leo. Who could forget those lovable characters? Then Deckard will sneak on board Cypher's private jet along with his now recovered brother Owen, Sam Wilson style. Okay, let's get back to New York. Cypher's plan involves remotely hacking into thousands of cars and directing them toward the defense minister. Dom, disguised as Jason X, then forces his way into the car and steals the briefcase containing the launch codes. Hobbs, Shaw, and the rest almost manage to stop Dom using harpoon guns, but he gets away on foot. This is when they fake Shaw's death, but then Letty takes off with the case, which was not part of the plan. Dom refuses to shoot her.
You love me. And you are not gonna shoot me.
But then Cypher's partner, Tormund Giantsbane, grabs the briefcase from her anyway. As punishment for Dom's insolence, Cypher orders Tormund to execute Elena, and that's really more of a Season 3 Tormund move, not Season 8. Cypher also explains her big plan to Dom, which makes sense?
The second I fire off one of those nukes, I put the superpowers of this world on notice.
Also, there's something about crocodiles.
I am the crocodile at the watering hole.
The nukes in question are on a submarine at a military base being held by Russian separatists. Don uses an EMP blast to get onto the base, and another to put the submarine under Cypher's control. The crew tries a bunch of strategies to stop the sub, including throwing people into propellers,
Nasty.
pretending to read Russian, and driving bulldozers through walls. But ultimately, it's Mr. Nobody Jr. who removes the all-important chip, disarming the nuke. Cypher tries to hide the sub in the open ocean while she regroups.
Take his team out.
I'm on it.
But the crew gives chase, because, you know, that's sort of their thing. They will chase you. It's around this time that the Shaws arrive on Cypher's plane, take control of the cockpit, and save Untitled Toretto Baby 2017. Dom, now freed of any need to serve Cypher, rejoins his family. Cypher fires a heat-seeking missile at him, so he does what all the experts agree you should do in that situation, and uses a crack in the ice to jump his car over the sub, thus blowing it up along with the missile. And he's fine. Cypher gets away to probably join the team in a future sequel. Hobbs and Shaw develop a begrudging respect that you've got to figure will pay off at some point. Han is dead, and Deckard killed him. Anyway, even though Hobbs receives a total pardon and an invitation to rejoin government service, he opts for retirement.
I figure it's time for a little break.
Wow.
Back in LA, Dom introduces his new son to the rest of his family.
Everyone, meet Brian.
Aw, you know, there's a lot to make fun of in these movies, but you gotta admit, they got some real heart. And that's it. That's our Fast and Furious Cram It on the Fast and Furious series. Did you really need to know all this to go into Hobbs and Shaw? Probably not, but I hope you enjoyed watching it anyway. We'll see you next time, and just remember, family.